So, welcome to your group, Pakistan Dynamics 365 and Power Platform community. And we really like to thank to all the volunteers and the speakers and the attendees, especially. Without them, we could not reach to that stage where we are today, having a lot of sessions, especially, and also we are getting Microsoft speakers today. A little bit quick overview about this group. We created this group for Pakistan, Microsoft Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. So we just named it as a Pakistan, but all people from the globe, from the every country, from every language, they are most welcome to come here and share their knowledge. We just providing a platform to each and individual professional to upskill and make the professional relationships here and share their knowledge. Very easy ways, 3 different ways to join this group. You can follow us on our LinkedIn page. You can follow us on our Twitter, and all the recordings of all these sessions will be recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. With this, without any further ado, I would like to introduce the most respected person, Sunil Garg. Sunil Garg is the principal group program manager of Dataverse in Microsoft. In today's talk, we are going to talk about finance and operations and Power Platform Convergence roadmap. From there, without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Sunil to you. Please, if you are ready, unmute yourself and feel free to share your screen, Sunil.
Yeah, hi, thank you, and good morning, everyone. This is Sunil Garg, and let me quickly share my screen. Let me know if you can see the slide deck here.
Perfect. Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. So over the next hour or so, what we are going to talk about and discuss is the work that is going on from a platform convergence standpoint, which is basically bringing finance and operations and Dataverse together from various scenarios perspective. So technically, they will still be 2 different platforms. But when we talk about convergence, we are really focusing on the business process. We are really focusing on the end user experience. That should be a converged experience, regardless of the fact that behind the scene, they are still 2 different platforms. So we'll talk about what are the scenarios that we are currently working on and what is the roadmap for convergence. So from an agenda perspective, we will share what is our approach to convergence, and we will then understand what are the scenarios that are getting enabled in the integrations landscape, which is what we call as data and events. We will see 3 demos. The first demo is a virtual entity and Power Portals play together. This is already generally available. This was released in last July. So we will take a quick look at one of the demos on that. Then the next 2 demos will be POCs, because this is still work in progress, but we still wanted to show you a glimpse of what you can expect and how it will look like at a high level, so that we are able to understand this better. And we will then try to understand the convergence story from a developer tools and extensibility standpoint. We'll try to understand what is happening in the Power Platform Admin Center and Lifecycle Services. We'll also try to understand what's going on in the Power App side that can benefit finance and operations and the whole convergence story as such. And last but not the least, we'll talk about some call to action, and we can wrap up with that in about an hour. So that's the agenda. And at any point in time, if any of you have any questions, feel free to, pause me and ask the question. We can take the questions in line and we can have the discussion. So that should not be a problem. So what is the approach to convergence, right? So I talked about what convergence is. So convergence is basically bringing both platforms together. Now, there are different ways to approach convergence. One approach could be that we pick one of the platform and we let go of the other platform, and then we start to rewrite the platform so that we can enable the same scenarios again. Now that will be a very brute force way of doing things that not only does not get anyone any benefit if that was the approach that was taken. The approach that is being taken is basically governed by these four principles. The first principle is to be opportunistic, right? Meaning, if we see a scenario which could be at a user experience level, which could be at a security level, which could be at a data level, or which could be at a at a core platform level, or any of this above, then there is an opportunity for us to go and do some work to enable that convergence experience. So the approach is definitely not to go and rewrite just for the sake of convergence, but be opportunistic and then pick scenario by scenario to enable the converged experience. This is going to be a journey. We don't expect us to, be complete from a convergence standpoint in one release or two releases, but this will be a multi-year journey. And recognizing that fact, we are taking a crawl, walk, and run approach, which is basically to take a step back, take the time to do the things right, take the time to share with all of you as early as possible so that we can get your feedback early in the cycle and you can help us to stay on the right track as we take this this humongous task of converging the platform. So this is definitely a multi-year journey, and we would like you to be with us as part of this journey so that we can we can do this together and you can help us accomplish this. The third principle basically is not just for internal to us at Microsoft, but this will also apply to all of you from an ISV perspective, partners perspective, and customers perspective, which is anytime somebody thinks about building a new feature or making a new customization, then understanding what is coming up from a convergence standpoint will certainly help and should be taken into account when decisions are made from a design perspective or from a customization approach standpoint, because we definitely want to avoid where talking from a Microsoft perspective, we don't want to write a same functionality twice. Instead, we want to make sure that if a functionality is available in the other platform, whichever that platform is, then we use that functionality for this other platform so that we naturally start converging instead of writing the same functionality twice. So something similar applies to all of you as well. So that is the message, which is the learning from this session should be taken to influence such decisions going forward. Last but not the least is a message which we wanted to explicitly state that X++ is not going anywhere, because when we started to share what we are sharing today with you with other ISVs and partners and customers over the last few months, this was one of the concerns that was very common when we were talking about the scenarios and what we are working on. So we wanted to make sure that we explicitly call out that X++ is not going anywhere. but the scenarios that we are going to talk is only going to complement X++ as an additional tool set. So these are some of the principles that we are strictly abiding by as we get into this convergence work effort. So how are we approaching convergence and how are we thinking about convergence? So what we are looking at here is the fact that Power Platform is at the center of all the applications. Now we talk about applications that are not on Dataverse, which is finance and operations, project operations, supply chain management, etc., etc. So the idea is for us to bring these applications closer and closer to Power Platform. And what is Power Platform? So Power Platform is a stack of technologies, right? And hence, when we talk about convergence, convergence cannot be in just one part of Power Platform. Convergence has to be across the various stacks in Power Platform, all up. So which is what we are trying to explain here in this slide, which is when we talk about data and events, which is nothing but integrations, we know that dual write already exists. That was the first step we took towards convergence. Last year, we released virtual entities, which was the second step we took towards convergence. And now, right now, as we speak, we are working on business events. That is the third step towards convergence. Because we are dual write and virtual entities, we have taken a big step forward from a data perspective to solve the integration scenarios and convergence scenarios where data is of essence. However, we want to take the next step to also make sure that convergence takes into account events also, because data and events together will make up a holistic story for business process integrations. And we will talk about that in detail in the next few slides. Now, as we go forward from a security perspective, there are several opportunities for us to enable convergence scenarios. Some of the scenarios that comes to mind right away is the fact that in the process of converging platforms, we want to make sure that we don't put additional burden on our IT administrators, right? Because the last thing we want is, because Microsoft has converged the platform, IT administrators have to now perform their tasks twice. They have to manage users in finance and operations, and they have to also manage finance and operation users in Dataverse, because there are scenarios that span both the platform, right? That is just one example, and we don't want that to happen. Our goal is to make sure that we don't increase work on any of our users just because we are converging the platform. So I will talk about some more details in the next few slides, but this was just one example of how authorization, there are opportunities in authorization for us to converge. There are opportunities in authentication for us to converge. And we'll talk about those examples in the next few slides. Talking about storage, again, we know finance and operation has its own storage mechanism. It has a SQL database for transactional data. It comes with Azure Blob Storage for unstructured data, and it comes with Data Lake for analytics, and so on and so forth. Similarly, Dataverse also has a SQL database. Dataverse has Cosmos DB. Dataverse has blob storage. Dataverse has Data Lake, and again, so on and so forth. So we can see, obviously, there is opportunity for us to converge from a physical storage perspective. And there is also a bigger opportunity when we talk about, or when we think about converging the SQL databases, right? Because if we are able to merge the SQL databases across the platforms, then technically they are virtually, they're almost one platform, right? I mean, if the databases are one, then it is not just physically they are almost one platform, but also we can enable some additional interesting scenarios, which the physics of the database will then allow us to do that, which is not possible today if they are in two separate physical databases, right? So those are some of the scenarios where the teams are working on right now as we speak, and we can expect something coming out in the next year and a half, as this is a quite complex area for to tackle. Then we talk about Power Apps and Admin Center. So talking about Power Apps, which we will go into the details in the presentation, but basically the idea is for the user experience layer to be converging between the platforms as well. Meaning, Power Platform, Power Apps should be fully available for finance and operations from an experience perspective. And what that means, we can take a look at it in the next few slides. Similarly, from an admin center standpoint, we know finance and operation is managed from LCS, whereas Dataverse is managed from Power Platform Admin Center. They both are conceptually doing the same thing, but they have very specific behaviors that are slightly different, but they have behaviors that are same as well. Which means we don't want our IT admins and environment managers to be going to two different places for managing each of these environments, because when we talk about convergence, true convergence will be when the environment behaves as one environment. And behind the scene, it can be two physical environments. One is finance and operation and one is Dataverse. But from a user experience standpoint, when I do a backup, then it should be backing up both. When I do restore, it should be restoring both. I should not be required to remember and back up two platforms, two databases separately, and then I have to restore them separately. And there is 9 out of 10 times there will be data integrity issues when we back up and restore independently. So this was just one example, but I hope you get the idea of what Power Platform Admin Center and LCS convergence means and what is the kind of problems that it is trying to solve from a convergence standpoint. Last but not the least, we talk about extensibility, environment lifecycle, and application lifecycle management. So we'll talk about what extensibility means in the converged world. How is extensibility going to change or adapt to the ever-changing world of technology, and how the new architecture can help in extensibility. We'll take a look at that in the next few slides. And similarly, when we talk about application lifecycle management, we talk about how do we deploy code packages. So today, there is a separate code package for finance and operation, and there is a separate solutions concept for Dataverse. And if there is a ISV solution, or if there is a Microsoft solution that actually spans both the platforms, then we have to deal with two different code packages separately. Why can't we look at a common ALM story where there is just one package and that package gets deployed across the platform without the user knowing about it? So these are some of the examples where convergence plays a big role, and there is opportunity for us to make some improvements to facilitate the experience and also make it much more efficient for all of us. So that's kind of a high-level rundown of how we are approaching convergence, both from a fundamental perspective and also from a technology perspective, as it is a very broad area, and hence, it is going to take a few releases for us to make progress into all of these areas. So now let's dive into the integrations area, which is data and events. So what we see here is basically the concept of having Dataverse as the platform that can accept events from any business application that is out there. So today, before Dataverse was called Dataverse, it was called as Common Data Service. So it was optimized, it was conceived as data driven, data gravity, and hence it was like Common Data Service. But we want to take it one step ahead, which is it should also be the platform for events, not just data. And to that effect, what we are working on right now is for Dataverse to have the concept of business events. Like finance and operation has the concept of business events. We now have enabled the concept of business events in Dataverse also. So this is generally available as of last October. And basically, business events in Dataverse is modeled as a custom API. And you can go and search and look up Dataverse custom API. You should get the documentation for that. But basically, think about that as another method, another API, just like any other Dataverse API that you can call. And that is how the business event is modeled, such that native Dataverse applications like sales, marketing, field service, etc., can define their own business events and hence will create and define the corresponding custom APIs. And the applications can call those custom APIs to trigger the business event. The same concept applies for external applications, meaning applications that are not native to Dataverse, like finance and operation is not a Dataverse application. Business Central is not a Dataverse application. So these applications can also now send their business events to Dataverse, thereby enabling Dataverse to get business events from any business application that is out there, including third-party applications. So that is what this slide is trying to explain, which is business events from all the business applications that is there can now send their business events to Dataverse. And by doing that, we get two benefits at a very high level. The first benefit is from a consumption perspective, there is going to be a consistent and a uniform mechanism to subscribe and consume these business events, whether it is Service Bus or Event Grid or Event Hub, etc. Dataverse supports all of these endpoints today. And if a solution spans both the platforms, there is no need for us to define an endpoint in finance and operation to get finance and operation business events. There is no need to define an endpoint in Dataverse to get sales and marketing business events. Instead, we can just define the endpoints in one platform, which is Dataverse, and all the business events, regardless of which application it is, it can be sent to those endpoints from Dataverse itself. If we extend this reasoning, we can see the benefits from a Power Automate perspective also, which is today we have finance and operations connector, and then we have the CDS connector. We really don't need two connectors, right? All we need is the CDS connector. And when we will have business events from finance and operations into Dataverse, then that CDS connector is all we will need. It can cater to scenarios. It can cater to business events from finance and operation. It can cater to events from other CDS applications also. And even if it is a third-party application that is sending its business event to Dataverse, we can still use the CDS native connector, which means there is no need for anyone to define a custom connector to get events from a third-party application. The CDS native connector is sufficient that can be used consistently in the solutions. So this simplifies the overall integration solutioning landscape, where we don't have to worry about multiple components. Instead, it is just the CDS connector that we can use. So that was like one benefit from an integration standpoint. The other benefit is from an extensibility standpoint. where once we have business events from finance and operation, for example, in Dataverse, then why not we allow our developers to actually write C# plugins in Dataverse, which they should be able to register on a business event coming from FNO, so that when a sales invoice is posted in finance and operation, the plugin gets executed in response to the business event and updates the account balance in CE right in real time, right? So this is happening in the same platform. It is not that the business event is going out and coming back into Dataverse to update the account balance to execute that business logic. Instead, the FNO business event is triggering a plugin, and the plugin is executing the business logic right away. So this is an example of how we can enable new extensibility stories for finance and operation, which we will talk about in a little bit more detail as we go through. So this is the idea, this is the concept for why business events coming into Dataverse will be a enabler for new scenarios. And these are the scenarios that we wanted to share it with you. So this is the list of scenarios again, as to what is completed and what is going to come next, and what we have in the roadmap after that, or in the plan after that. So dual write is already generally available, so that is done. Virtual entities are already available, that is also done. So the first two are completed. The next three is what we talked about, which is business events from FNO should be available in Dataverse. We are launching preview for this, private preview for this in June this year. And then number 4 is basically a net new capability, which is having CUD events for finance and operation entities. So today, finance and operation has business events, but finance and operation does not have entity CUD events, which is create, update, delete events. Dataverse had CUD events, but Dataverse did not have business events. So we fixed that problem, where now Dataverse has business events, as we talked in the previous slide. But the next step is to fix the other gap, which is to have FNO support CUD events for FNO data entities. So the concept is any OData entity in finance and operation, whether it is a custom entity or an out-of-the-box entity, that can be virtualized as a virtual entity in Dataverse, will be able to trigger CUD events from Dataverse using the virtual entity. So finance and operation will send the CUD event to CDS, and from Dataverse, the CUD event can be subscribed and can be received through the virtual entity interfaces. And again, this will be available in the CDS native connector as well. So which means that should be sufficient for all scenarios related to finance and operation. Number 5 is what we talked about, which is triggering a non-X++ plugin in Dataverse in response to a business event or a CUD event from finance and operation. Number 6 and number 7 is more futuristic. We are not doing any work on that right now. It is just brainstorming that is going on. But the idea is to have a common event model, similar to what we have for data, which is common data model. Along the same lines, why cannot we have a common event model where we should be able to define the schema for a specific business event, like invoice posted, for example, as a common schema, such that whether the invoice posted business event comes from finance and operation, or whether it comes from Business Central, or whether it comes from SAP or Oracle, it shouldn't matter, because as long as these applications conform to the common event model, then the subscriber and the consumer of the invoice posted business event can be assured to get the same kind of schema all the time, irrespective of which application is actually triggering that business event. So all of a sudden, from a development perspective, it becomes much more easier to build an ISV solution that works with multiple different business applications, where you don't have to code for each of the application. You can just code against the common event model, and you will be able to receive events from these various applications as long as they conform to the common event model. So that's kind of the scenario we are trying to solve, but it is a long way out, nothing planned as of now. And number 7 is having a synchronous execution pipeline between finance and operations and Dataverse. So with business events, we saw asynchronous convergence, right? Which is something happens in finance and operation, and then something can be triggered in Dataverse. These are two non-blocking transactions, right? These are asynchronous in nature. But we also have scenarios where we need to allow or enable a X++ transaction that starts in finance and operation. It should be able to span and go to Dataverse to execute some business logic, come back into X++ in finance and operation, and then complete the transaction and commit the transaction, right? And if this transaction fails somewhere in between, then it should just roll back across the platforms, right? So that is the synchronous pipe that we are talking about. Again, this is a complex piece of technology that will take some time. We are not planning to have anything meaningful anytime soon, but this is definitely something that we are kind of prototyping and then iterating internally as of now. So with that, we can quickly jump to 3 demos back to back, and let me give a moment. I need to make sure that I share my audio from the recorded video. So I will disconnect my screen and join back. Give me a second. Okay, so now let's look at the demo. So the first demo is basically, it's a recorded demo, which Jeff actually recorded for us. And this basically is showing the use of virtual entities from Power Portals.
In this demo, we will be showing the Power Portals integration for finance and operations through virtual entity. In this scenario, Contoso wants to expose their requests for quotation to the web and allow unauthenticated users to be able to view the list of current requests for quotation, as well as to allow those users to sign up to request to be a vendor. The way we do this is we create a new user in finance and operations called Portal Anonymous and set that user to be the user context that any portal access is run in. This user is given read access to the Perch published RFQ entities, which is the list of requests for quotation, as well as the vendor perspective request entity, which is how we request to sign up as a vendor. We create these two entities as virtual entities in CDS and then can expose them in Power Portals. Here you can see publicly available the list of current requests for quotation. And further, I can sign up to request to be a vendor by filling in this form and hitting submit. When I do that, CDS is directly writing through the virtual entity back to finance and operations. And you can see here in finance and operations that the request shows up in the prospective vendor registration requests. So this is showing real simply how you can take just a couple of existing entities and expose them to Power Portals. This scenario was the unauthenticated scenario where we want to expose some data publicly to anybody who hits the website. We also support authenticated access, where any users who are accessing this must exist as known users in finance and operations. And we can control specifically what security they have on individual entities based on each of those scenarios. Thank you.
So that was a demo which quickly showed how easy it is to use Power Portals with finance and operations now using virtual entities and what kind of scenarios we can enable as of now going forward. Now, the next demo will be the FNO business events in Dataverse and also the CUD events in Dataverse. This is just a POC. This is not production code at all because the work is still in progress. But we wanted to do give you a sneak peek so that it will help to understand, and then you can also plan accordingly.
In this demonstration, we will be showing business events flowing from finance and operations through the common data service to subscribers. In this scenario, Contoso wants to have some notifications every time they post a free text invoice. So while posting this free text invoice, on the CDS side, I've set up a flow that says when an invoice is posted, I want the resulting information to be posted to Teams. So in a second here, we should see a Teams notification show up that the invoice has been posted. Additionally, in CDS, I've written just a standard CDS plugin to update the number of invoices posted and the value of invoices for this customer. So you can see it jumps from 6 up to 7, and the value has been updated. This shows that multiple subscribers in CDS, including Power Automate, are able to subscribe to the same business events coming from finance and operations. Taking this scenario a little bit further, we can also look at create, update, and delete events, as those are also business events. In this case, I have a virtual entity for customer groups. This is exposing customer groups from finance and operations CDS, and I can do a create there, which will then show up back in finance and operations. I can also delete from finance and operations that same group that was just created. Similar to the previous scenario, I have a Teams notification, which is subscribed to the create, update, and delete event of this particular entity to notify Teams when that happens. And so you can see here, customer group entity was created and then deleted, allowing customers to subscribe regardless of how that business event is raised. Thank you.
So the key message and the key concept here was the fact that multiple subscribers were subscribed to that business event or a CUD event in Dataverse. One of the subscriber was a plugin, like we were talking about, the non-X++ extensibility scenario. And the other subscriber was Power Automate. So when the CUD event happened from finance and operation, or the business event that happened from finance and operation, the same event actually executed and triggered the plugin and also the Power Automate. So that is the kind of convergence that we are looking at, where it is not just integrations, but also extensibility becomes an area of innovation going forward. So now we jump into developer tools and extensibility using plugins. So this is basically what we were talking about all this while, which is how do we enable non-X++ extensibility story for finance and operation using business events, now that business events will be there in CDS, or data events, which will be there in Dataverse going forward. So next few slides, we will take a quick look at the user experience from a developer perspective as to what is being done. So the idea is, even if runtime supports execution of plugins using FNO business events or data events in Dataverse, that is just the runtime aspect of it. But before we reach runtime, there is the developer aspect as well that we need to take into account, which is if the developer, the FNO developer, is not able to write a C# plugin in an easy manner and is not able to register that plugin with Dataverse on that specific business event or the CUD event in an easy manner, then there is going to be a barrier to entry. If we are not enabling the developer to stay where they are, which is the Visual Studio IDE experience, for both the platforms, scenario by scenario, then we will not break the barrier to entry. There will be resistance to adopt the new technologies. So that is where this scenario fits in, which is how a developer persona can come in and make use of this new technologies across both platforms in a relatively easy manner. So this is not the end of all, but this is just the first step. And as you start using this and as you start engaging with us, and based on all the feedback that we can get from you, this will only improve. But we wanted to show you some screen mockups as to what the current thought process is. So basically, as you see, we are looking at having a Dataverse extension for Visual Studio in the Visual Studio Marketplace, which is nothing but an add-in, just like any other Visual Studio add-in. And once the add-in is installed, one of the solution templates will be, building a solution for Dataverse application. And once you use that template, it will have some boilerplate code, you will get that. And then assuming you have connected your Visual Studio or dev environment to your Dataverse environment in the backend, then Visual Studio can now pull the metadata from Dataverse in that experience itself. And what you can see here is the mockup where we are showing the list of business events in this experience. And when we talk about catalog is a very important concept going forward, because if Dataverse will get business events from 10 different business applications, how can the user know which business events is where? How can they discover and how can they find the invoice posted business event from finance and operation? Because there can be invoice posted business event from 5 different applications for all you know. So what is the easiest way? What is the most logical way for the user to search for it? So that is where the catalog comes into play, where you will start seeing finance and operations catalog in Dataverse, which will have all the business events and card events from finance and operations. There can be a Business Central catalog for Business Central events. There can be a third-party catalog, right? For some POS application, for example, outside of Microsoft ecosystem, there can be a catalog for that application because the ISV brought that catalog. So the idea is to use the concept of catalog to kind of categorize these events so that navigation becomes easier, discoverability becomes easier, and the overall experience is much more natural and logical. So that's what we are seeing here, which is under the event catalog. We see sales catalog, the marketing catalog, the business central catalog, the finance and operations catalog. And then under the finance and operation catalog, we see the data events and we see business events. And one business event is the customer free text invoice posted business event. So this is the business event the developer 10 minutes ago implemented from the same Visual Studio IDE in the X++ environment, right? That is how typically a custom business event is implemented. So nothing has changed on that front. But what is going to be available going forward is, on one side, I wrote the X++ business event, brand new business event. And when I come to this experience here, if I right click and refresh the FNO catalog, I will get my custom business event right away from Dataverse. Because when I implemented, when I compiled, and when I build the events in finance and operation, it made sure that it is also getting and pushing it to Dataverse. So by the time the developer comes here and they refresh the catalog, they get all the metadata here. The business event is there. They can right click on the business event and they can say, I want to create a plugin, and they can write the plugin and they can then deploy the plugin into their Dataverse environment, at which point it goes and registers in Dataverse, and they can then test the scenario on the dev environment. So that's kind of the dev tool experience that we are currently working on to enable easier development experience to consume business events and card events from from Dataverse for finance and operations. So the next one is Power Platform Admin Center and Lifecycle Services. So from a lifecycle services standpoint, the first few steps that we are taking for the current April release is basically to introduce the notion of a common environment, right? Which is, I mean, today, if you see when you want a Dataverse for finance and operation, you can go to LCS and you can basically click the setup button, which will get the environment for Dataverse, which will also install dual write, for example, right? And if you have used virtual entities, you do something similar. You go to the app stores and you get the virtual entity solution, and that installs on your Dataverse environment. And then what you do after that is you manually connect both the environments, right? You create an app ID and you register that app ID on one side, and then you go do the same thing on the other side. And that's how you as a user, you are connecting the environments manually by yourself. So what will happen going forward is anytime we install or deploy a Dataverse for a finance and operation, the provisioning experience, the provisioning flow itself will make sure that these two environments are intrinsically connected by itself. So which means we don't have to do any manual connection or any of those setup, but the environments will be pre-connected and they will know who the peer environment is, right? So authentication is taken care between the environments intrinsically. So that is what the link phase is, which is linking the environments as part of the deployment itself. And then some additional experiences are coming for trials to make sure that even trials have the same linked environment experience and they are not left behind. So these are the first few steps that we are taking from a LCS and from an LCS perspective. Post April, we will start to see more and more convergence of LCS with Power Platform Admin Center, where we want to make sure that all the environment lifecycle operations like reset or backup or restore, all those operations should be cohesively applied across both platforms, like we talked about at the beginning of the session. So those are the scenarios that will be tackled in the operate phase post April. And then all these new scenarios are going to be applicable for new environments from now. But in the migrate phase is when we will work on bringing the already developed or installed environments into the new ecosystem. So that is the migrate phase, which is to bring the existing environments up to speed into the new capabilities, if you will. So that's kind of what the work is going on from the LCS and PPAC standpoint. And this is just the scenario list, which I already talked about. And let's quickly look at what is going on in the Power Apps side. So basically, from a Power App perspective, there are three key scenarios that is being worked on. The first scenario is basically, take a scenario where the sales rep is actually working in CE, and the sales rep actually wants some sales data, some sales order data. So it will be really easy if the salesperson is able to pin the X++ form directly into the UCI in CE, so that if they want to see the related sales orders for a given account, then they are able to see that right away, right, using the same X++ form. So that is the first scenario. The second scenario is the reverse, which is we should be able to pin any UCI form, which is either a model-driven app or a custom app, into finance and operation. So that is possible today, but there are some enhancements that are being worked upon in this as part of the second scenario. The third scenario is basically making sure that the PCF controls are applicable and available for finance and operation as well, which means the control that you have written using PCF framework for Power Platform can be used in finance and operation also. So that way you write once and you can use it across both the platforms. So that's what the three scenarios are from a Power Platform, from a Power App perspective. So this is basically showing a screen mock-up of how the experience will be, where the FNO forms will be available in UCI, and you can pin the FNO forms in CE app, for example. So if you see here, this is the FNO form, but it gels so naturally into the UCI that it doesn't feel like it is coming from FNO. It feels like just another UCI form. And as you click into the record, it opens up the details page, which also is, it looks and feels like UCI. Similarly, the reverse, which is having the UCI form in FNO, is also possible. So this is just showing that screen mockup where there is a list page, and when you click on a record, you are able to basically how you can link the UCI form into the finance and operations. So this basically goes through that experience, and you see the list page which we saw initially, and then when you click on that, you can see the details of that. So this is talking about the model-driven apps that can be pinned into finance and operations, and it's the same experience of the list and also the details page. So this is the summary for these scenarios, and the current timeline for these is end of the year. So they are not part of the April release, but they are part of the towards the end of this year. So there are other scenarios which are being looked upon, which is around unified search, help pane, and mobile experiences, to make sure that all these capabilities that are there in Power Platform is also available for finance and operations. And mobile experiences will need mobile offline capability on virtual entities, which is not there today. That is a gap, and that is what needs to be worked on for us to enable these new scenarios. So last but not the least, talking about call to action. I mean, like I said in the beginning of the session, use this information to plan your future projects. Now that you know what is coming out, what is being worked upon, what are the concepts, and what is the thought process, you should use this information to plan your implementation projects from an architecture perspective and design perspective. And hopefully, this information is useful, and we should stay connected so that all the latest information is available to you. And how do we get connected? Well, the ask is, we are launching a private preview for the April scenarios that we talked about in June, the week of 7th of June. So if you are interested, if your organization is interested to participate in this hands-on workshop, then you can email me and you can let me know that your company is interested, your ISV is interested, and we can connect offline and we can take it from there. So highly encouraged to take a look at this and participate in the workshop so that we can learn from your scenarios, and you can also learn the latest technologies, and you can kind of get your hands-on experience as well, which you can then use to go and train your team in the company as well. So that's kind of the call to action. And with that, we come to an end of the presentation. So we have about 5-6 minutes. If there are any questions, feel free to ask those questions and we can discuss. Yeah, Rachit, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thanks, Sunil. Sunil, that was a great presentation. First of all, it's really good to get all this information and get that view. One question is, what is your advice for implementations which are in flight and integration heavy? So, for example, we are working on an implementation which has around 30 plus integrations, and we are using business events heavily. So is there any recommendation or advice which we should keep in mind while designing those integrations? Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely right. I think Rachit, the recommendation will be to participate in the workshop, right? Because the first step is to learn the new technology, to understand what it can do and what it cannot do, because we want to know what it cannot do based on the scenarios that you will bring in. So I think the first step is to participate and bring those real life scenarios into the workshop. And then once you are familiar, once you understand how this is working and what are the requirements, that can help you to plan how to take the first one or two scenarios go live on the new architecture, right? So we have to take step by step here. So I think the first logical step will be to participate in the workshop.
Sure. Thanks, Sunil. Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone?
Hi, Sunil. This is Faisal here.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Yeah, thank you so much for your great presentation. Got a quick question. Is there any roadmap Microsoft is sharing somewhere, or is the roadmap available to transfer whatever the current scenarios we are doing to this new convergence technology?
So we will be publishing this information in the release notes very soon. Now that the plans are kind of finalized and plans are firmed up and the work has actually started, we will now be able to comfortably publish the information in release notes, so or the release plans. So look for that information very soon. It should be available.
Okay, perfect. And if someone wants to join these private preview workshops, so what are the criteria to be the part of these private workshops?
Yeah, so like the slide is talking about, I mean, feel free to email me at this email address,
Yep.
and then we can take it from there.
Oh, perfect.
Any other questions? Anyone?
I don't see any other questions. A couple of shout outs to your presentation and the upcoming features. Future looks very bright and exciting. It seems like being a FNO consultant, we have to learn a lot from the platform and
Yes, absolutely. Learning is fun, right?
Learning is fun. Yeah. So yeah. So we will not be only restricting ourselves writing the X++ code anymore. So there is a lot to learn now, but which is good. Yeah.
Absolutely. So back to you. If there are no more questions, yes, I can hand off to you now.
Oh, thank you so much, Sunil. Yeah, I don't see any other questions, but I really would like to thank to you taking your time available at very late hours of your time. So really appreciate it. We all would like to really thank you again. And thank you so much for everyone who has joined us today and to make this event more successful. So as Sunil mentioned, if you have any questions about this preview features, please feel free to reach out to Sunil and spread the words, whatever we have learned today from Sunil. This is how we are going to help the community and the rest of the users. So last question, sorry, Kasun has asked a question here. Will there be any changes to license with the changes?
So licensing is an interesting conversation, and that is part of the workshop as well. So all the ISVs and partners and customers that are participating in the workshop, we are actually having licensing as a topic for discussion. So everyone is bringing or will bring their licensing concerns and licensing use cases. So that will help us understand, and that will make up for a good discussion. So yes, licensing is a hot topic as we converge the platforms. So yes, I mean, again, if you participate in the workshop, I think that will be a good forum to learn from others and also bring your scenarios and concerns from a licensing perspective.
Sounds good.
Yes, Rachit, you have a question?
No question. So actually, I just wanted to say kudos to Faisal, because I know he's going through a personal emergency and he still made himself available for this show. So I just want to say thanks to Faisal and want everyone to appreciate his time, taking out time from that situation.
Yep, absolutely. I came to know like 15 minutes before the session, so I completely appreciate that. Thank you so much, Faisal.
All good. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm still at hospital, so joining from here. So it's all good.
Okay. All right.
So thank you so much for your time, Sunil, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And we really look forward to having so many sessions like this. Till then, bye from us, and we all speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Thanks all. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks, Faisal. Cheers.
Bye.